Hello, folks. Welcome to this special podcast on China spilled the magic bean all over the world. That's the name of the topic. So, before I go ahead with the topic, I would like to clarify one thing. Being a libertarian, I might have a personal inclination towards the free market economics, but I will never have any bias on any system around the world, geoeconomically or geopolitically, because I look at the world from not just a few hundred years, but over 5,000 years of history. Yes, I said 5,000 years. You may ask why and how I can go to 5,000 years to talk about something happening right now, right? Or why not few hundred years, like most of the historians do. I hail from trade and business family and business community from southernmost part of Tamil Nadu, the state currently under the Union of India. I am from a place close to the Tamil community from Adichanallur, a few miles away from my native town where my parents are from. And Adichanallur was the oldest civilization as far as recorded archaeologically. Most of you may not believe or understand, but that's a fact. German archaeologists have done a lot of research, and archaeologists from all over the world have done some research. Unfortunately, for many reasons, this research was not being promoted much. And still there are a lot of research going on in Adichanallur, where the society is being dated up to 4000 BC. Adichanallur is the civilization of Adichanallur combined with a port city called Korkai. Right? They used to be the baton of the olden kingdom, the first generation Sangha age, Pandya kingdom. Right? So, hailing from such a very old civilization that had trade all over the world, even those days, few thousand years ago, I look at history from that perspective, right? Every history moved one civilization at a time. From one kingdom to the other kingdom, things changed. The trade part of it, the civilization part of it, the culture part of it, each one of them are kind of a tangled together. We have progressed as a human society at one civilization at a time, and every time we progressed, we always learned things from the previous civilization and the society, right? So I don't have any bias. That's what I wanted to make it very clear. I don't have any bias towards any society right now, because I come from a very, very, very old society, and I have done a lot of research in the last few years. I spent enough time in terms of digging deeper into these societies, and on the process I found my own backyard has much more richer experience, right? Everything started, my journey started with few years before Around 2019, when I was doing research on artificial intelligence system that I was putting together, right? The research I spent full time on researching for my artificial intelligence system. I went to went backwards to study the Greek philosophy, and I explained this many times in my previous conversations and videos that I studied a lot about the Roman Empire. Then I found that the baseline for the Roman Empire, the foundation came from the southern part of the modern India, which is my backyard, right? So the structure of the society, the governance, the Sangha age, there were three Sangha age between the 5000 BC till the 1000 BC. There were three Sangha ages, right? We call it as a Sangam age. So from the first Sangam age, Tamil society was a very civilized, and they had a trade all over the world, correct? So I come from that background and that pride. That means I have no bias towards any kind of a system or a society right now functioning, but I do have a love and affection for the republic, right? Sangam is baseline is republic, ruled by the people, okay? Group of people coming together with consensus. Kings were only a moderator or a collaborator back then during the Sangha age first, right? I have written a lot about that in my book Mayanomics, and I am going to speak about that in my some of the videos. I will speak about it, correct? So coming to China, so the topic is China spilled the magic bean all over the world. That is the topic, right? So the reason I gave the background is I don't have any reservation, I don't have any bias to any modern society. I welcome them. I'm a historian. I look at everything in a positive outlook. There are some negatives and there are some positive things. I'm only going to present it as it is. While most people are engaged in the argument that about China's Belt and Road Initiative as a success versus failure, good versus bad, and profitable versus unprofitable. In the past almost 20 years, at least the last 10 years, there was a lot of discussion around the BRI, right? While most people engaged in argument about China Belt and Road initiatives, like success versus failure, good versus bad, profitable versus unprofitable, in the past 2 decades, right? Especially in the last decade, a lot of discussion going around BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, right? But there was something profound was happening while people were arguing, right? Which everybody ignored or failed to notice. That's what I'm going to point out here in this discussion. Everybody was looking at the direct effect of BRI on the geoeconomics, but there are a lot of indirect effects what BRI brought in, or China's diplomacy in overall brought in, right? That is the indirect effect on the world. That's what I call it as a magic bean spill over the world. Post BRI, nations started looking at foreign investment very differently than before. For a very long time, neoliberal institutions like the World Bank, IMF, World Trade Organizations, United Nations, right? Even financial task force, right? All these institutions turn to be funding as aid and monetary institutions, and combined with financial systems like the Western economy is designed financial system, the dollar, the euro dollar, duo working together. So dollar that circulates within the US system, unprinted dollar system that works as a kind of a credit, dollar-based credit in Europe, right? For Europe and the world doing the trade, the euro-dollar system. But, the nations were in the grips of these monetary systems and the institutions that were being used to enforce such a grip, right? It's an undeniable fact that over a period of the last half century, nations gained from the roles of such institutions. There is no doubt about it. Okay, nations gained a lot, especially in the nation building exercise. Right, many underdeveloped nations could able to utilize this opportunity of this system to grow. However, the nations started looking at the pieces of evidences in the last two decades, 4 or 5 decades, and then now they started realizing on a long term they could not see a great benefit, and they believe that they are at loss. So nations started realizing more and more the deal brought by these systems and these institutions were kind of a bad deal on a long run. Right? Most nations stuck with such deals thanks to the failure of the corrupt governments and the non-availability of alternate deals. Right? The biggest loser was African continent. But with the expansion of the Chinese economic integration, the world started seeing and learning alternate method of nation building and the economic expansion together. It's not about whether BRI is a better deal or not, right? It's about the alternate mechanism of funding and international economic development. That's what nations started looking at with the BRI. As of today, BRI is a decade-old practice with 155 nations getting benefited out of it. With the 75% of the populations of the world kind of got involved with BRI. That's a big number. With the arrival of BRI, most world population accounting, with the arrival of BRI, the terms of international cooperation agreement started taking new form. The way BRI was designed, got designed, of course, between nation to nation, it varies, but overall, there was a big difference. The world could able to see a huge difference the way BRI is structured. Remember, the Chinese have been doing business with the world since the 500 BC, right? Since they started. Now, they existed as a society long before, smaller packets of society, but as a kind of a nation, the 500 BC is the time the greater kingdom started appearing, and they were doing business. They learned to do business with the southern part of Indian subcontinent, the Tamil kingdom, and moving forward with around the world, and eventually with the Europe through the Silk Road. Okay, so BRI is a modern day Silk Road. So neither China nor international trade acumen is a kind of a new thing. It's all there for a long time. So BRI should be seen through that lens only. The entire Africa is a transformed land post BRI. That's an undeniable fact, right? While there is a split verdict on the financial benefit of BRI deals between nation to nation, these deals varied. And the structure by which these deals were created varied, right? But overall, recent times, the African nations started seeing overall benefit of BRI, and they started appreciating it. It's not my word, it's the leaders and the people of the African nations. It's not just Africa, even Asian countries started looking at BRI as a way to grow. There are some failures. It's not a kind of a failure, it's some kind of a default. Some of the nations, like there are examples like Sri Lankan government's issue, they could not able to pay back Chinese, on trouble with some of the countries, Pakistan or other countries having some trouble dealing with the BRI. But overall, Chinese are ready to renegotiate the deals. It's not that they are not willing to renegotiate. So these things are clear from those who are in the international trade and politics would know that there's a huge difference between what the West was handling and what Chinese are handling. What is not obvious and openly clear is that the nations now started feeling liberated and kind of pursuing economic and financial models of their own. This is the beauty of it. This is what the magic been. So what under the West-driven economic models, the world were stuck with the system. They could able to benefit, but they are stuck with the system. They could not renegotiate on their own terms. Then came BRI, little bit different, not fully, I would say, completely beneficial to the host nations, but the host nations started feeling BRI is more balanced and fair deals. Now the spillover effect is, whatever the learning process they were going through by dealing with the BRI, right? The way the treaties are created, the way the contracts were done, the way the execution of work, and the way, most importantly, the way Chinese have structured on leaving the benefit of the projects to the host nations, right? That is what the nation started understanding and realizing the good part of BRI. So the West ran out of powerful tools, except for the military, which is also questionable to some extent. They ran out of the tools to control the neoliberal institutions that were created to control and the monetary system. Everybody started playing with the similar kind of tools because they learned a lot from the West, including the Chinese economic system, how it was restructured and redesigned to reflect or to transform from the West-driven economic system. Nations started creating their own international champion organizations. They started creating the similar type of or international institutions like World Bank, and they started creating negotiating deals, right? The way it is more balanced and more beneficial to them. One may argue that this is, we are living in a multipolar world, and the world has the reality is, yeah, we are living in a multipolar world, and these are all common things. What is unique about it, correct? But the unique thing is the nation's ability to execute or customize and execute the financial and economic system, okay, where the primary beneficiary is the local economy. Even with the BRI, the primary beneficiary is always China, although they don't do it at the cost of the host nations, right? They manage to give a kind of a fair deal. They manage to create a fair deal. The West always, kind of kept things like asset accounting, currency, and other financial tool to have a control, right? To pull the plug, right? That's how West always function. It's under their terms, and they know how to pull the plug. But they can always push back. If the nations try to push back some of the terms or modes of engagement, then they know how to pull the plug, right? But BRI broke the ice and provided the taste of these components to the nations. How to create a deal or use certain tools that can be beneficial for both the guest and the host nations, and having a balanced trade. And it's not that one side can pull the plug, not other side don't have the option. That's how the BRI started teaching, directly or indirectly, and the nation started learning how to create. Oh, there is an alternate model. Oh, things can be done this way as well, right? That's how they started understanding. Not every nation around the world is creating financial and economic deals wrapped around their products, solutions or commodities and intellectual properties. But many nations have learned to do that. That's the difference, right? Still, a lot of nations are under the control of the Western style economic monetary system, but many of them have learned to deal with alternate way of mechanism thanks to BRI. The West can no longer be the wise man in the room, right, or a bully in the game. If they continue to play with their old books like that, I know some of the nations, primarily the US, still blindfolded with the world arrogance, but they soon will understand it and transform, hopefully. It is unfair only to point finger at the US. Of course, many nations, the Western bloc of nations always done that, right? The European nations created such kind of unfair deals as well. That's where the US learned from, what the way of Europe functioning. The US learned it from there. Then eventually US took it to a new level after World War II. Even the rest of the world, including China, should be aware of this development and learn to coexist and cooperate, correct? The world is changing. Now, every other nation around the world is creating financial and economic deals wrapped around their products, services, solutions, commodities, and intellectual properties. infrastructure development and development banks are appearing in every part of the world. And they are not just only capitalized by dollar. Such banks are capitalized by multiple baskets of currencies. That is an important thing to note. This is the strange water and tides where the West should adopt and adapt for coexistence. There is no room for only one player, GeoEconomic player in the world anymore. The playfield is changed. There's not going to be one currency that's going to dominate the world. The world has seen in the past few centuries, there was an understanding, there was an adjustment between the Western nations, trade-off between the different nations. There was always one dominating world currencies, other could be able to do the transaction with the help of it, right? There's an adjustment. There was an adjustment. There was a trade-off, kind of a win-win situation for them. So that was the world order. The order changed from the Portuguese to the Dutch to the British and then to the American. At every stage of the history of the trade in the last 500 years. Well, not anymore. I know a lot of people argue against it. Americans, some of the Americans that I know, the so-called economists and arrogant investors and business people, they talk about American exceptionalism. The exception of America was not based on the military might or anything else. It was purely based on the way it was structured with the republic, with the libertarian republic system. The pride was is only valid as long as there is a respect for the system the founding fathers worked for. I don't see the evidence of that. It's not just only the arrogance left, right? I know people keep claiming that it's the end of the day. It's a state capitalism versus the private capitalism. Whenever private capitalism works, American state capitalism, basically the military industrial complex comes and takes over, and then the money is made with the direct or indirect warfare. Right? Yes, it was the case in the past, but I don't think so. There's going to be a free run for the US anymore in the current world. And it's not only the US. I'm not trying to sideline only US. No, I love US. It's just I love the way the country. Because I come from the belief of liberty, freedom, and the republic. As I said, I am proud to be coming from the society which laid foundation for the liberty, dignity, and personal freedom and rule by people 5,000 years ago by the Sangha Tamil kingdoms. So that's where the Roman Empire inspiration for Roman Empire came from that. So that pride, is okay, right? But then if you don't have those things anymore, you don't have the values of republic, you don't have the value for a society of liberty, the market freedom, then you don't have any right to, be proud of, right? You have nothing to be proud of. So yeah, there is a lot of room. I'm not saying it's the end of the U.S. U.S. can take corrective actions if they want to be great again. Let's see. So the world is in the strange tides and water. So West has to learn to coexist with the rest of the world. Baskets of currencies is going to be the reality. Still, there's going to be exchange versus reserve currency arguments, or there's going to be different approach for reserve currency versus the transactional currencies. We have to wait and see how that's going to transpire, right? I'm not saying BRICS is going to be the alternate currency. What I'm saying is there's going to be a multipolar world and multipolar currency systems, and there is going to be more type of transactions. Anyway, money is created from thin air anyway. It's just the trust that creates the value for the currency. As I said, the West cannot be a wise person in the room anymore, and cannot be a bully. Definitely cannot be a bully anymore. If they continue to play the old books, then they will doom to fail. There is absolutely no doubt about it. As I said, it's unfair to only corner the US. I'm not cornering US. Generally, last couple of centuries, the so-called Western bloc of countries did a lot of things that was very, very dominating and one-sided trade practice, keeping the other people as losers in the game, at least on the long run, right? The New World Order, it's going to change many things, including the currency. Currency itself is not the New World Order. In my opinion, it's not just about the currency that's going to change. I know the governments try to play everything through monetary system, everything through the currency manipulations, or maybe they call it as an interest rate hike and all. But then, end of the day, they just try to use currency as a tool. But what I'm talking about, the New World Order, in terms of a lot of things, the economics, financial engineering, the trade, innovation, and everything. There's going to be a New World Order in each one of these aspects. To baseline such an argument, I take 5 major aspects to compare the West with BRI. 5 points I wanted to discuss. Number 1, natural resources. Number 2, intellectual properties. Number 3, treaties and legal contracts. Number 4, human capital or human resources, capital and resources. Asset accounting and financial accounting. These are the 5 aspects I wanted to take it for discussion, to really compare and contrast between the West and BRI. For centuries, let's start with natural resource. Acquiring natural resources as a wealth has been a practice for thousands of years. Ever since the human civilization was born, longing for acquiring wealth, and mostly through the natural resources existed. At least for the past few centuries, the West-led conquest of natural resources was obvious, and because of the advancement in the shipping industry, they could able to go around the world and acquire these things. But by the way, shipping industry is not, like most of the historians try to give
lot of credit to the Dutch and the Portuguese, the pioneer in the shipping industry. That's not true. 1,000 years back, the Chola Kingdom, Tamil Chola Kingdom, could able to go all over Southeast Asia. They didn't, for the trade, they didn't go and colonize people, but they did trade with most of the nation. 1,500 years to 1,500 BC all the way to 1,500 BC, the Chola kingdoms were ruling most part of, controlling on the trade, the most part of South Asia and Southeast Asia, and they did a lot of trade with the Chinese. And this is only to give the latest, the quotes which most of the people quote. But Tamil Kingdom existed 4,000 years ago. Right? Even the Korkai, which I was mentioning about, where everything was born through the Channallur as a first civilization of a human, special humankind, right? So the shipping industry existed long back. Otherwise, there was no Korkai. Korkai existed as a port. That means Tamil people learned to do trade, learned to build ships, could able to go. Of course, the technology did not transfer to the other, the next generation of people, because back then there was no printing press, there was no knowledge transfer. If a society is gone, a kingdom is gone, pretty much most of the things are gone, or many of them went under the water. In case of Tamil Kingdom, lot of things went underwater. Starting from Pumbagar, the whole coastal areas. Who knows how much of land was submerged under the ocean, which was part of the Sangha Tamil Kingdom. Having said that, modernization of, at least in the recent years, let's give some credit, the Portuguese and Dutch created the shipping industry, and they could able to go around the world, and they did definitely create trading hubs and could able to control the natural resources, sometimes through the power and sometimes through diplomacy. They could able to acquire natural resources from all over the world. Mostly it is going to be, it was always, mostly it was one-sided, right? So over the decades, the nations started realizing that these natural resources of their national resources are kind of getting looted by the invaders. Not necessarily invaders of war, even invaders of trade. That's how they felt, right? And now things are changing. So post-colonization, many of the deals that was created during the colonization continued post-colonization in various different forms. That's where the neoliberal systems were created, institutions were created to play along. You just got the freedom, but not the freedom of war. You got the freedom of governance, but you didn't get the freedom of trade. Indirectly, most of these Western nations continue to control, right? That's how most of these countries now started looking at Belt and Road Initiative as a savior, right? An alternative. At least they look at BRI as a non-predatory system. They felt the Western system as a predatory in nature. That's the key. So natural resources are now becoming a very important aspect of every country when in their political and geoeconomic strategies. The next thing is number 2 is the intellectual properties. The West always worked on the principles of monetizing the intellectual property. It's not about acquiring the intellectual property. The West always operates that way, right? They find a way to monetize it, run through the system of monetization quickly, monetize and kind of amortize and retire, right? By the time they made money, in the sense, monetize it. So until that period, they make sure, you'll see everywhere in modern day contracts, until then they push back the competitors, alternate sources not to compete with them. They lock them out in many ways, right? Basically, such monetization created a kind of provenance and time stamping for the intellectual property, so they don't have to really, when you monetize, that is recorded through the form of contracts and the time stamping and all. So there is a provenance of record, so it's easy to prove that they own things. They are the pioneer. They control things. So the competitors can't really go and take a chance, right? So they achieve two things in one shot: monetize, at the same time keep away the competition. That exists even today in the Western societies, especially in the US. So most of the countries under such monetization framework don't dare to compete, they comply. Japan, South Korea, post-World War, right? You know what happened. So after the World War, some of the countries, South Korea, Japan, Germany, they had these societies, people are so intelligent, so they are intellectuals with they are go-getters, they are intellectuals, and they could able to really innovate. Unfortunately, because of the World War, post-World War, they had to, a lot of things change, they have to comply. They chose to comply, they had no option. That's how you see that they failed to stand up against the West when it comes to the intellectual property game. Instead of playing a game of what they did was, one of the carrots the West gave, the US gave to these countries is, the world is made of private people. Private, wealthy people control most of the nations. Or at least that's the way the West wants most of the countries to indirectly run. Internally, they preach freedom, democracy, and everything, but then on the other side, they wanted each one of these countries, most of the countries, they like to breed dictators, or they like to help families, to grow and exercise power either directly or indirectly. A lot of times, then democracy is the front face for families, family businesses, and families to control the nation, right? So their interest was to, the carrot given them to invest back into the US and stable assets, because remember, these nations and these families or private individual, the special interest, always fear of rebellion from mass of the people. These are only 5 to 6, 7, 8% of the people, right? The remaining is the common man can revolt against them anytime and take away all their wealth if they keep the wealth inside their nation. So it is obviously their interest is to not to invest in their own country. They have to invest back into the US or anywhere, they can convert that wealth into a tangible assets, and where they can, it's been protected very well. Of course, America will protect it. Right? That's how America gets back, fan in all the wealth back into in the form of dollars. Throw the dollars away and then bring the dollar back and then give back the, investment assets. So one thing is common with all these post-World War economies is that the wealth is accumulated and controlled by small private group of people. There are no national interests. There were no national interests. What you read from media and other things at all. Just a play. There's always private interest. They use the word capitalism, private capitalism, in a loose way. It's a nasty thing to use, capitalism. Capitalism is a very beautiful thing, but unfortunately it has been used for used to buy and for the crony capitalists. Same thing as socialism as well. Socialism is a great feeling and never was implemented properly, but still there was a hope to implement it in one way or the other. But then the problem is it's always the cronies who take over with all the isms. So there is no national interest, correct? As most of the capital and asset making machines are national assets by Chinese, right? In China, the China systematically changed the game to favor by becoming the nation owning most of the patents, surpassing the USA. If you look at culturally, China has always been one nation, correct? Culturally, China has always been one nation. Culturally, China has always been one nation, one civilization, one culture, and one culture of conformative society. Conformative society. China has been always like that. During kingdoms, conformative. The people obey, right? So as most of these capital and asset making machines are national wealth, basically owned by the government. During kingdoms, it was owned by the kings, and then with the modern day China, with the state-owned machines, basically the government owns most of these assets. So every patent owned by acquired, China went ahead in acquiring these patents, wealth. So the private wealth went into becoming national wealth quickly, because there is no private ownership. There are private ownership in China, but then the most of the major machine, the industrial business machines are owned, and percentage might vary, but pretty much they are owned by the government. So obviously the intellectual properties of the nation, it becomes a national wealth quickly. Now this is the thing the other nations started now realizing and started building intellectual properties. The governments are infusing money into the companies. Some of them are startups, some of them are existing companies. If US could able to help Google or help Tesla or help Facebook, one way or the other, right? You can always claim it is a private money, but then it is always subsidized. It is always printed money handed over to these companies to create a champion companies out of these companies, right? Champion organizations out of these companies. So obviously the national wealth is built using intellectual properties. That's a game-changing thing. All over the world, governments started building or help, either they build it directly or with the help of champion organization, they started acquiring intellectual properties. That's a big game changer. The West cannot control the intellectual properties directly or indirectly anymore. In the sense they would have to build their own intellectual properties, only control that. The next thing is human capital and human resources. Across the times of change, thousands of years, one thing always remained constant. Human used as an asset, acquired as an asset. Even in the modern society, you can see that. Human being possessed as an asset or considered as an asset. Companies hide this with different words, but end of the day, some of them straight away use human capital as a word. But what does it mean if they wanted to acquire and control human? So human as an asset remained as a dominating practice throughout the history. Why? Because human as a capital machine can go ahead and create more machines which can create more capital and which can acquire more wealth and make money and build wealth. So with the human as a capital, the human brain is so powerful, and then physical thing also, both white collar and blue collar, the modern day, the differentiation between the white collar and blue collar, right? The both aspects of human, the physical aspect and the mental aspect of human, so brilliant, right? So beautiful. It is so powerful that it can create unlimited things out of the human mind. Human mind is, the whole world is a Maya. It's a reflection of human mind. So human mind is so powerful, it can create worlds. So human asset was always a major form of asset throughout the history. I'm not suggesting the West is the one who started the practice of the slavery or acquiring the human and controlling the human and all. These things existed, it all started long ago, well before even the Western society was formed as a kind of a one unilateral society. Now they are not yet, but still, as a block, right? So this practice was there long ago. But it is a known fact, it is the West who mastered the art of transforming this forced labor into asset creating machinery or capital machines. From the agrarian to the feudalism and to communism and modern day capitalism and socialism, everywhere you see human has been, I won't use the word exploited. Some places it has been exploited, but what I say is even utilization of human resources, human capitalism has been long-standing practice, and it is a inevitable one. So it's a very important thing because we need, as a society, if we have to keep progressing, human brain has to be capitalized, human physics has to be capitalized. You got to work, you got to utilize your knowledge, wisdom. The question is, who is using it? Who is making money out of it? Who is monetizing it? That is the question here, right? So West was having a great tools they could able to put into effect post World War. They invented many different things, thanks to the global compliance conformity to the West, led by the U.S. And supported by the U.S. Currency system. Everybody got into complying with the tools and mechanisms the U.S.-led Western countries could able to put. Things like hire to build, non-compete, non-circumvent. All these tools were being used as a part of the trade agreement. In exchange for dollar, you exchange all these things. You give me all these things, rights. So how in the earth a country is going to capitalize from their human when they are accepting to sell the human brain to the US or lease it, right? By accepting all these terms. The moment you sign a contract, next 5 years, the human, I got this many human, I will give it to you. Just keep sending me dollar. Keep sending me euro. If you agree to that, and if your nation is supporting such kind of a mechanism, then you're not going to innovate. And that was the exploitation happening for a long time. So the knowledge transfer was never a problem for the West. What's the point in knowledge transfer? Because I'm not even going to let you to do anything. I don't need a transfer. By the time I capitalize everything, I build a machine which will have the patent. So I don't need a knowledge transfer. Even if you go and do the knowledge transfer to the other people, I'm going to, by the time I make it so impossible for you to do that, because of the currency and the asset valuation, I can beat you. I don't have to even worry about stopping you from knowledge transfer. But until I build the capital machine, I would not let you do anything. 5 years, 10 years. That was a Western practice. That started changing a lot with the BRI coming in, because Chinese themselves did not comply to it. Some of the nations, including the Union of India, foolishly, did this thing in conformity. Since the 90s, the private or so-called public tech organizations started selling human brain, leasing human brain to the West by accepting not to innovate in return, or not to put their human into real good innovative work. That is, that's the practice. And even today, the same practice going on. But China, no. Chinese or the, engineering back office or a factory for the world, that's true. But they were very careful, right? They were playing on their own field, under their terms, not to comply with the anything, in terms of, they won't compete. They have agreed to non-compete, but when it comes to the knowledge transfer or owning the, not to, to 100% comply with the not copying, they just did not comply with that. They could able to do the knowledge transfer parallelly, while the West built the capital machine Even inside China, the capital machine was built by the time the knowledge mining was happening parallelly. So China was getting ready to rebuild the capital machine on their own. And that's what they did. They did that. Now the West has no clue how to control it. They cannot. Unlike Japan, which had a different pact with the because of the market opening. In fact, China took that as well. But then China deal with China is quite different than with Japan. Japan always dependent on the US. Japan is an innovative economy. There is no doubt about it. But they kind of couple too much with the US, they cannot run like China. So Chinese BRI deals kind of started spilling this to the other parts of the world. They started realizing same thing. If Chinese could able to do both, they can capitalize on the dealing the business with the West. At the same time, they can build their own nation, their own intellectual property using their own human capitalism. Why not us? That is the major change going around the world. Then the next aspect is the asset accounting and financial accounting. China had created or championed alternates like ASEAN Bank, AIIB, and recently the BRIC. Of course, China was instrumental still is instrumental in pushing BRICS. To the Western dominated neoliberal system, they started creating a lot of institutions to challenge the neoliberal systems. And they're using that to give developmental contracts to African and Asian countries. So they're giving an alternate taste, which these nations never enjoyed the taste of such an alternate arrangement. Whatever World Bank could able to dictate terms, United Nations could able to dictate terms, IMF could able to dictate the terms, and these nations never had an opportunity to even evaluate any alternate things. They've been forced through geopolitical means and indirectly by GeoEconomic means, and these institutions have been used as a tool to force them. China started expanding their hedge by whatever the Western sanctions, whatever the indirect or indirect Western sanctions. China started while the Western propaganda machine keeps talking about de-risking and decoupling with China. China is already practicing something. It is already practicing it. It is already decoupling it. The West-dominated asset accounting is no longer a secret or only limited to the West. To capture something as an asset in your balance sheet, you need to have liability somewhere, right? West was mastering that. They were able to capture asset, something which they never own. And they always transfer the liability to the other party. The art of math and science of transferring your physical assets into value was practiced by the West for quite few centuries. Japan, Germany, and other economies, including the Union of India, played along with it in this game of transferring the value as a derivative from one country to into the books of the other country. Because these nations developed, they were building their nation, at least thinking that they're building their nations by complying to this game put forward by the US. But China never did that. China was very carefully playing all along to create their own book of accounts. It's just you can't really capture. And Chinese private people, unlike the German or Japanese or South Korean private or families going and investing back in the US, China does not have that kind of a need, because China, again, most of these institutions are owned by the government. They are already national assets. They don't have a need to go and transfer the asset to something else or invest in some other country. So the asset and financial accounting practice are getting mastered by other countries all around the world. The next thing is the treaties and the legal contracts. I touched upon this thing, before as well. So in the previous world order, the institutions helped the global institutions help the West in terms of making the countries to comply to those treaties. And many of these treaties are one-sided, favoring the West in a large scale. That's good. There was always a benefit to the host nations, but majorly they've been under the control of the West. So these treaties are changing now. The monetization of the resources, the human capital, assets, tradable commodities, intellectual properties was only possible because of such treaties. Without those treaties, such kind of a massive capitalization and transferring the assets values into the book of accounts which they don't own, right, would have not been possible. It was impossible to do that. So the treaties, blocks coming together, with one treaty covering most of the things, right? That is going away. Nations learned that they can do business in a different way because China spilled the magic bean. They could able to show to the world that there are other ways to do it. You don't have to sign a blanket treaty. You can have case by case treaties. You can call treaties or you can call bilateral arrangement terms. I'm a businessman. I've been writing contracts throughout my adulthood. I would not sign in any agreement to giving a blanket because I'm a businessman. I know what it is. Unfortunately, most of the countries are ruled by non-business people. They cannot even understand trade. They cannot even understand a business contract. How can they understand these treaties? They only listen to the folks around them who are going to be lobbyists. So obviously the special interests are pushing it. in a different way. So most of the treaties are, signed for special interest by the special interest, pushed by the special interest, right? But that's going to be changing. That is already changing now with the nations started learning over a period of time. They started becoming. A lot of every country has economists and people, smart people come, there, and obviously everybody is learning and coming to power, and they started advising. People like me are available to advise the nations and advise the big companies in terms of how to create such a deal instead of blindly accepting a larger scale treaty. And so nations are refusing to go with anything blanket. They are looking for multipolar deals. National interest is coming first, and then they wanted to go on case to case basis. That's the biggest magic being spilled over by China to the world. Almost every nation is focusing on national wealth capital building and creating champion organizations, startup companies. Startup companies is a different story. Not everybody is getting it right, but then again, many countries are getting it right in terms of creating champion organizations out of startup companies. Many unicorns are making a big difference in the world. Unfortunately, the Europe uh, failed to create such kind of capital machines. It is unfortunate. Why? Because of the special interests. They are not interested in creating a capital locally. They're okay with creating this capital outside. They call it as a capital. You put a machine or invent a machine and put a machine to production in your home country, but then you transfer that asset value into the books into another country. That means you're really not creating a capital. You're creating an intermediary mechanism of transferring your wealth to the pocket of the other nation. I hope most of you understand this. That's where the national wealth is. It's a pseudo national wealth, pseudo capitalism. They even call it as a socialism. That doesn't make any sense. You invest, you use your national, the brain of your best engineers, and you build a factory. You create world's best product, but you don't create an asset out of it. You don't create a capital out of it. You are a loser. You are the entire generation of people are losers. Germans started understanding it now. Few families control. And their interest is not to keep the capital inside Germany. Same, it's not, I'm not cornering only Germany, but most of these countries are like that. They just are not capable of understanding this. China is not only instrumental in pushing itself into a relevant force in the New World Order, but also played a key role in spilling this magic bean all around the world, making the world as a multipolar society with every country negotiating special treaties, policies, and custom made deals. That's a big magical bean.